welcome to BTC Sportsline. I'm your host, Michelle Cunningham, and this is my co-host, Ray Lana. Today, as promised, will be a special edition highlighting fantasy football. Ray and I will get into what exactly fantasy football is all about and why we play. Also, we'll go over some players that have been hot and not so hot so far this season, and who you can target going forward in the fantasy year. So without further ado, Ray, what is fantasy football?
Well, fantasy football is where people get together as groups and they make a league. And essentially with that league, they pick players off of each individual team to put on their team, and their team scores points based on the performance of those players. It sounds pretty complicated. It's not that bad, actually, because the computers do a lot of the work for you if you're using a computer system to...
Which who isn't these days, right?
What's that?
Who isn't these days?
Yeah, and I mean, there's apps on phones and things like that, so some people don't even ever pick up a computer to do any of the footwork for the team.
So you can do it all from your phone?
Everything can be done
on the
from
go.
your phone. On the go, anywhere you're at. It's very simple as far as the accessibility for it these days. Now, when fantasy football started, it was very, very difficult because you actually had to pull the stats yourself for yardage and points scored and receptions and completions.
There probably wasn't fantasy football experts to go listen to on podcasts and ESPN giving you the breakdown of who you should start, who you should say, who's going up in the ranks. And
yeah, there wasn't. Obviously, the people that actually started the fantasy football thing were actually AFL football owners and also statisticians and other analysts. So technically, they were the first experts. If they had shows back then, they would have been on the shows. But it started as a 10-team league back in 1969 in Oakland, California. So it's been around for a very long time. They've been playing it since the AFL was around. So, I mean, it's very old school.
Now, why is it for everyone?
It's really simply for everyone because anyone can play. It doesn't matter if you're, a 5-year-old to a 100-year-old. Anybody can play. It essentially makes everything a little bit more fun with sports because you can watch any old football game and you actually get to, have something riding on it. Some people even gamble on this. It is a way of gambling. It's an industry that is, made over $304 million since 1997 just on the gambling portion of it through some websites like DraftKings and such.
Now that was going to be my next question is, does it cost anything? So I think that can kind of vary though. It can cost something and it can't. Depends on
exactly
how much you want to put into it.
Yeah, it's totally up to you because you can actually get into leagues where you pay to buy in that have prizes. You can, depending anywhere from $5 to thousands and thousands of dollars if you wanted to, or you can do it just for fun too with your friends. You can play with people or you can just pick up random people on the internet that you've never met before in your life and play with them.
Which I think is a good way to kind of jump into it, just to get your feet wet a little bit. But myself personally, I'm in 4 different leagues. I have a work league, I have leagues with my friends, and that's kind of a cool way to just make it more interesting, because there's another element where.
Yeah, I find one of the things that people don't know until they actually get into it is that fantasy football itself is addicting. It is something that once you start doing it, you just want to do it more.
You obsess over it.
And you obsess over it. You'll ponder the thoughts of whether to start this guy or sit this guy for weeks at a time, or at least for 1 week for their matchup. And you praise yourself when you make a great call, and then you just hate yourself when you make a bad decision. And then we all try to compile as much data as we can and information from
crunch numbers.
The analysts, crunch numbers. We're all experts, right? I mean, that's how.
I know I am.
I'm definitely an expert too, so there's no doubt about that. But my track record shows it a little bit better than yours, I think.
That's overall debatable.
It's true, truly debatable.
Very, very debatable.
We have opposite records right now, almost. So.
In one league.
In one league.
Okay,
and then we're first and second place in another league. So I guess anything's happening. But it's kind of changed the landscape of watching football itself. A typical conversation between me and a player would be hey, great game. And he'd say, but we lost. And I'd say, yeah, but you scored me 25 points, so I won my league, so I'm pretty happy. So.
Yeah, it can make things confusing too if you have players from a team you don't like on your fantasy team, because then you're they're playing your Seattle Seahawks, but say you're the 49er player, so you want that player to get you points for your team, but not beat your real life team.
Yeah, I feel pretty bad. I try not to start any of my opponents against my real life team because I want to see my Seattle Seahawks win. And first off, the Seahawks have an incredible defense, so it's kind of hard to start anybody against them anyway. But I find myself mad because they ran the ball with a different guy, or say the Seahawks, if I had Seahawks players on my team, they threw a touchdown pass to a guy that I didn't have on my team, I'd be like, oh. it's great, but it could have been better if it would have gone to Jimmy Graham or something like that.
It's very fun. It sounds like I think that's good advice for anyone out there listening, maybe thinking about joining the league next year. That's very helpful. So thank you for that. And as you can see, anyone can play fantasy football. When we come back, we will have a special guest with us to recap the season so far and help us look to the future. We'll be right back. Welcome back. With us today, we have Keone Akoba. Keone is a part of mine and Ray's Fantasy League and is a contender every year. Welcome to the show, Keone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is, how did it feel to hand Ray the first loss of the season?
It would have felt even better if I were to beat him, but we unfortunately ended at a tie, so I cannot tell you how it felt because we tied. But, you know, at least he didn't win. He didn't win, that's for sure.
Still undefeated.
Yeah,
That's all that matters.
He didn't defeat me, so that's fine.
Oh, well, that'll come later in the playoffs.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a really good week, actually. Well, I had a horrible week to start, and then
if it weren't for David Johnson, well, you know, being that Antonio Gates and Demarius Thomas only scored 1 point for you, that was terrible luck for you, but good for me. But
and that's kind of the highs and lows of fantasy, though. You know, you have those big names where people fall in love with the big name, like Demarius Thomas, and they want to start him. Maybe it won't be a good matchup, or maybe it is a great matchup, but they still don't score the points, you know? Like, how does that feel when...
Well, there was a lot of points on my bench.
You're kind of let down, you know, when you got this guy and he's like, they say he's projected to get 10 or 20 points, you know, and then all of a sudden he puts up 1. And you're like, oh, man, I might lose this week because of that. I mean, I started with, I think, Thursday night I had 3 players play and only had 1 point apiece, which was crazy. So.
And you still tied the game?
And I still tied.
Wow.
A high score, too. It wasn't like it was a, 79 he put up. He put up 91 points.
Yeah, when David Johnson's projections were 16 and he scores 31, it can go the opposite way too, you know. So you never know. That's why you got to set your lineups, and I always try to look at matchups too, but, you know.
It's very matchup based, I feel. I had one of my games this week, I had the Jets defense, and I was ahead by 40 points, and they still had Arizona defense and Brandon Marshall, so I benched my defense because I was afraid they'd give me negative points, which they did get negative points. So I think Ray might have given me advice on that.
I was like, bench them. There's no way. I mean, they could hinder you more than they could help you, basically, at that point. A defense, like, if you're ahead by a long shot, like, benching players is not a bad idea because, well, you just don't need any more points, and you can still get negative points from other players, so it's pretty difficult.
But who have been some of the top performers this season for your guys' teams individually?
Well, my team, I'd say Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon's been pretty good. I don't have some of the top running backs in the league, but Melvin Gordon's actually performed pretty well this year. He only had 1 touchdown last year, but he's had quite a few this year. And
I feel like he's touchdown based, though. Like, he's looked like he's done better because he's got a lot of touchdowns. Take away those touchdowns, his yards per carry isn't really that high.
Yeah, which is fine for me. As long as he's getting touchdowns and giving me points, that's all that matters really in fantasy.
That's all that matters in fantasy world, right?
Which I agree, too, because, like, well, Melvin Gordon isn't getting all the yards that he was before or even since last season, but he has been getting touchdowns consistently. So I think if that continues, and he's awesome.
As long as he keeps getting
For me,
touchdowns,
we just talked about David Johnson. I mean, the guy is the #1 running back in all of fantasy football. He's scored a ton of TDs. He got 8 TDs on the season. So that's a really big boost for my team. I also have DeMarco Murray, who's #4 in the league, who's also on my team. I have been fortunate enough to draft well with some good foresight to be able to collect.
I feel like you're bragging a little bit right
I am bragging a little bit.
That's part of the reason
it's a live draft. It's difficult to do live drafts.
Let's get back on topic. So talking about DeMarco Murray, that kind of rings a bell for me for, like, injuries. You know, how does an injury hurt your team? Like, how do you can't really plan for that going into a fantasy season.
No, you
never
can't.
can.
And that's why you got to look at, like, some of the busts being Adrian Peterson, you know, because he got
Big
injured.
bust, yeah.
You know, I mean, he's been out the whole year, and, you know, so, I mean, what can you do when you
Did
draft
you have him
someone?
on your team?
No, not at all. No, I was wary of his past injuries, so I would not draft him.
And he was a first-round draft pick.
Yeah,
so
that's why I said.
I mean, you're talking about, like, being detrimental to your whole season. Like, that guy's like, you know, you could have got David Johnson or Julio Jones or Ezekiel Elliott or one of these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, these younger players like Zeke, I mean, this guy is amazing for fantasy football. He hasn't really put up the touchdown numbers yet, but he's got the yardage. It's going crazy.
Your offensive line is a beast like theirs, and it's pretty easy to run behind it. So, but
Still, I feel like rookies are kind of scary to go with in fantasy because you don't
draft
have
one.
you don't have much basis to go off of.
Yeah, if I'm drafting a rookie, it's way down in the draft. Like,
especially somebody like Zeke, because you don't know if he's going to break down or wear down because he's a rookie.
Yeah.
You don't know if he can handle the full 16 games, and
I mean, his college performance was definitely stellar. So coming into the pros, he was a very pro-ready back at the beginning, and he's running behind a great offensive line, which kind of brings me to another point that DeMarco Murray, man, he was behind that same line, and everyone thought that was the only way he was going to perform. And, well, he's performing just fine right now.
That's true.
He doesn't need the Cowboys line to be good. So I think
he was with the Eagles and he didn't do good. So I think
I think that was a system, though.
People were wary to go with him because he didn't perform with the Eagles. So now you're with the Titans and you think it's not too much better of a team. Do I take the risk? Obviously you took the risk and it's paying off, but that's how much thought has to go into these games.
It's all a risk-reward situation, and when you're setting up your team, especially, you're picking players that you think have a potential to do something that have less of a potential to fail at something. So it's really a difficult thing to do, and you never know what you're gonna get. Really, it's all just what you think and what you get from other people. So I mean, there's a lot of people out there telling you what you should do, but it's really difficult to figure it out.
Yeah, and college play doesn't go to NFL play. There's been a lot of people that have had stellar performances in college and come into the NFL and they can't back that up. So considering that and the risk people took on drafting Ezekiel, he hasn't been a bust, but who has been a bust for you guys?
As far as rookies go?
As far as any fantasy players go that you had high expectation for?
I would say Demaryius Thomas actually has underperformed from what I thought he would perform this season. He's traditionally been like a top 10 wide receiver, and I think he's in the 20 range, right now, which is not bad. And a lot of other people would, consider him as 1-2 receiver. I have him as a flex spot on my team for the most part, and he's pretty much staying there. If I see a chance to get someone better, probably pick up somebody to put in his place. He doesn't have quarterback play, which is something that can also hinder your players. So I think that with him, he's totally underperformed from what I thought he would do.
Somebody that's not on my team that's not a rookie either, but he's been to me a bust this year is Jeremy Hill. He's drafted pretty high in a lot of leagues, and he hasn't really produced.
He's on my team.
Yeah, how's he done?
Not so well.
Bitterness right there.
Yeah, well, sometimes he does well enough that you should have put him in, but every time I put him in, he just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, you never know until that's why you put him in the lineups. But he is one that was supposed to have a lot more production so far this year that just has not performed. So he had one good week, but that's pretty much been it.
Yeah, they said that he was gonna take over basically, except for like passing downs, and Bernard would be in then. But I mean, it's just been 50-50, and then they're getting behind, and they just aren't running the ball. They're abandoning it, so it's pretty difficult. My surprise is for the whole league is Matt Ryan. This guy was like way down on people's radars coming into the season, and now he's the number one quarterback in all of fantasy football.
Yeah. Actually, I think going into this season, I had mentioned Matt Ryan being pretty high up there. I drafted him in one of my leagues. So last year he had a lot of turnovers in the red zone. You turn those turnovers into touchdowns, and you get exactly what he's doing right now is producing. So
yeah, I think that with him it's kind of weird though, because you're getting a major fluctuation from week to week. Like one week he's getting 30 points, the next week he's getting 20 or 15 even. He's averaging 25 points a week in fantasy on standard scoring leagues, but I think it kind of goes with how Julio Jones does, is kind of determining where he's at. And we've all seen Julio this year. He's like way up
and
then
down.
Way down. Like he's scoring 60 points and then he's scoring 0. So it's pretty tough to have those guys.
But he's one of those big names that you have a hard time putting on your bench because he's Julio Jones.
Exactly.
So who's going to bench Julio Jones?
You can't bench Julio.
Tough too, because the game who went off for 300 is they put him on single coverage. They didn't double him the whole time like most of these teams are doing. So it really depends on the matchup and how they kind of play Julio, I guess you could say, as far as what he's going to do.
Speaking of that, that's a big bust this year too, is the Panthers' defense.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the ones that got the 300 yards against Julio, I mean, people had that as one of their top defenses coming into the year.
I think virtually any of the Panthers are a bust for the most part. I mean, they have little strikes of brilliance here and there, but I mean, this is a team that went 15-1 last season and made it to the Super Bowl. They are awful this year. They're like a whole nother team. They have a hangover from the Super Bowl, and that's, I think, why they always say that the teams, it's rare to make it back to the Super Bowl, back-to-back Super Bowls. But they're just playing. They're not even the same team they
Yeah,
were
they might
last
not
year.
even make the playoffs this year.
And it's not just losing Norman. I mean, it's way
It's
more than that. Yeah.
It's way more than that. So who do you guys think is going to have a big second half? Like, who's your player to project that you would give advice to, like, you must target this person, and they're going to have a great second half?
Well, I mean, I think Ezekiel is going to still have a good second half because that offensive line is not somebody you could target necessarily because he's already on a team and nobody's going to drop
gonna
him.
give him
But as far as people that you could pick up, I just picked up Cameron Meredith, and I think he's going to have a big second half because Kevin White's out, and they're going to be doubling Alshon, which I have too, so I have the handcuff. But I think Cameron Meredith will have a big second half because I think Brian Hoyer will throw to the open receiver, and he's going to have single coverage on his side of the field a lot compared to Alshon. So
I completely agree. Meredith is, I mean, he's averaging 15 catches a game, I think, right now, which is insane. I know it's only 2 games, but it's
Small
still
sample size.
Yeah, I mean, he's over 100 yards both games too. So the guy's lights out, and he's got a good connection with Hoyer, which is cool. I think that Odell Beckham's probably going to pick it up a lot in the second half of the year. He's been kind of tapered off. He's had 1 or 2 big games, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, he's been a steady 11 to 15 points. But I think that he's going to get some big games like he did last week. I also see Jimmy Graham having a big second half of the season with him and Wilson having a good connection going forward. I think that he's a monster. I mean, no one can deny the guy's ability especially when he gets into the red zone. So I think that he's going to have a huge second half. If Luke Wilson's out for any extended period of time, he's going to be in every down.
especially
I mean,
as
I
Russell
think
gets healthier
even
too.
with Luke Wilson in, he's still someone you're going to play.
Yeah.
But so, real quick, who's going to win the league this year?
Oh, me for sure.
Me, of course. I mean, it's going to be me. It's not you.
There's
I mean,
no way.
It's not me.
Well, we know that. It's going to be me,
I'm
though,
bidding
for
my
sure.
time. I'm
Well,
letting you guys get comfortable, and
I'm
Just like the
already setting
Panthers.
up for the playoffs.
Yeah,
I'm already
exactly.
guaranteed in there. So I'm not even worried about you guys.
yeah, but I mean, that's, in the playoffs, anything could happen. That's,
I get a
mean,
bye week this week. I play Josh. So, I mean, that's a bye.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's pretty good.
Steve won the whole thing last year, so that goes to show you anything could happen.
Yeah,
in
he
the
got
playoffs.
lucky. The
That
one
won't-
week he scored more than me was that week that he beat me.
That's
So
what I'm saying. You just
that's all
never
it
know
takes,
until
right?
that you.
And you know what? He
gotta
never
play him.
shut up. He kept talking trash. the
He's
whole
still talking.
time.
He's probably talking right now.
He probably is talking right now. That guy, man.
so I just hear a lot of conversation between you guys about other people that aren't named me. So I don't know why that's happening.
'Cause you're not on the
because
radar.
you
Yeah,
guys
we're talking about the threats.
Exactly where I want to be, under the radar. Okay, so let you guys sit there, be comfy, cozy, and
You'll
yeah,
just
and
sit
then when I
back being
swoop
one of
in,
five.
We'll
yeah.
sit back and get first or second pick next season.
Yeah, all right. Well, as you can see, fantasy sports can create a lot of competition between you and your friends and make any mundane matchup relevant and entertaining. When we come back, we will talk a little about the Seahawks win this weekend and preview some of the next week's matchups. Stay tuned. Welcome back. So, the Hawks narrowly escaped a dangerous Atlanta Falcons team on Sunday. What happened, guys? Why was it so close?
Man, that third quarter got away from us. That's all there is to it. The Hawks played a really solid first half, took a lead, and then they just kind of lost their fundamentals. They had some bad communication or what have you, blew a few coverages. And, the Atlanta offense is dangerous, so they can always take it to us if we are not doing anything.
I thought it was going to be a really good game after that first half. They only had 80-something yards in the
So a
first
good game
half.
for a Seahawks fan.
Yeah,
not so much for
not sorry if
Falcons
you're an
fans.
Atlanta fan, but I thought it was going to be a pretty good game. But then the third quarter happened, and it hit the fan, so to say.
But that's what good coaches do. They take a team in at halftime and they regroup them and they make some adjustments and they come out and do exactly what the Falcons did to the Seahawks.
I found that, going into the game, I was a little nervous, going against our old defensive coordinator as the head coach over there. He knows our team really well, and he knows our defensive scheme, which is one of the things that, they're an offensive team. So knowing that portion of it, I was kind of scared to see what he could do against us. And it looked like he kind of mixed us up a few times, to be completely honest. Fortunately for us, the Hawks are a very resilient team, and they are not afraid to come back. So, even with a missed field goal, a missed extra point, we still got into a position where we could win the game.
I thought it was pretty cool to see after Richard Sherman was kind of out of sorts after a couple blown coverages. Who knows whose fault that was, but the team really rallied behind him and got him back into the game, got his head back into the game. And I don't think there's too many teams in the league that would rally behind somebody like that. They would, I think a lot of teams would just let them fester or whatnot by themselves, but a lot of these guys came up together and were drafted by the Seahawks, so they got that camaraderie, and to see them kind of rally behind him and get him back into the game was pretty cool.
I think that's what makes the Seahawks a special team. You
Yeah.
know, it's just that that's what they show. They just have that togetherness and can come back and.
Yeah, when they're jumping on the sidelines together,
Yeah.
man, I was getting pumped up
Yeah.
at home watching
Yeah,
it. You
that
know,
was
it's
cool.
like, what team does that? I've never seen them do that except for when they're doing something positive. They're like trying to correct a negative.
Yeah.
So.
You know, it was a close game and it was a nail biter. We came through. I know there was that pass interference call, questionable at the end, but that could have gone
No
either
call.
way, with Julio, the hands to the
I'm
face,
fine the way
too.
it went.
I didn't see anything.
Nah.
Right. I mean, and that's what Sherman says, too. So
Yeah.
I go by Sherman.
Yeah.
You can't
He was-
argue facts.
He was there.
I think he
was
handled
there.
it very well then in the game, too. He didn't say it was a pass. He just said they won the game. That's it. So let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
A W is a W.
I think Wilson's play is a little rough around the edges still. I mean, he looked great against the Jets, and
Yeah.
it almost looked like he took a step back a little bit.
Well, the Jets are pretty bad. So, I mean.
That's true, too.
He looked like he took a step back, but I mean, it's a pretty decent. I mean, their defense isn't really that good, but they have some good players on their defense that can kind of step up. Wilson didn't seem to have the same kind of, I don't know, machismo or whatever. How he gets up there usually, he looks like he's just totally confident and in charge, and he just didn't seem
Some
like
of
it
his
this
throws
game.
just kind of
a little errant,
sailed,
yeah.
and and I think he had like 11 rushing yards for the whole game, so he's not himself clearly. So hopefully he can regroup, get a
He'll get
little bit more
healthier.
healthier.
As time goes on, his knee, his ankle, everything will get healthier. When the line solidifies a little more, with Ifedi being in there now last couple weeks, he's looked pretty good. He just needs to keep progressing and keep getting better. But with him being potentially our best offensive lineman, it's good to have him finally in there. But Russell will get better, and it just takes time.
I agree. Offensive line is very key to every part of the game. Same with the defensive line. But the Seahawks play Arizona next week, Sunday night football, primetime, and we all know how good we play in those primetime games.
And we love them, and I love them too because I get to see the whole game usually. So there's nothing interrupting my life and to watch those
it's all
games.
about you.
And that's all that matters. I'm sure they built the schedule just for me.
I'm sure of it.
They're going into Arizona, which is not a good place to play. It's kind of a hostile environment. They're actually an underdog by 2 points going into this game. Basically, the two best teams in the division going up against each other. It's going to be interesting to see. You got another high-powered offense, but Arizona has a little bit better defense than what Atlanta had. So I think that it's kind of a bigger deal for us to be able to step up our offense. Plus, we're on the road, and it's a little bit harder to play on the road in a hostile territory.
We usually play well there, though.
Yeah, I'd say
the
our
12s
fans travel pretty
Yeah,
good.
they travel,
so.
especially to Arizona. They travel pretty well. So hopefully we're louder than their fans, like
I don't
usual.
think it'll be. Their fans are pretty.
Well, if we take them out of the game early, especially.
Exactly.
Well, I saw the Jets, how they were playing them yesterday. I mean, at the very end of that game, they were doing all-out blitzes, and they were just killing Palmer. He couldn't do anything back there, and he was looking like he was an old man back there after he got hit a few
He
times.
is an
He
old
is,
man.
yeah.
Well, I know he is an old man, but he was looking like it, too.
He's one hit away, too, from, possibly being out for a game or two, so.
Which, do you have him on your fantasy team, Michelle? Because then he's probably going to go out.
I already did what I dropped him. So.
Oh, you got to
should
pick him
probably
back
pick him
up.
back
yeah,
up,
I
yeah.
got
Pick him
Tom
back
Brady
up.
now. Remember my comeback? I got Tom Brady.
Yeah, right.
Any
But
week now.
if we can apply that type of defense where we're just all out blitzing and we're actually we're just getting to the quarterback, Arizona's going to be nothing.
Hopefully Frank Clark's back, because that'd be big.
And our rush defense is good. David Johnson's
Bennett had
obviously
that
really
too.
good, but he's going to get some yards, but he's not going to be able to run 58 yards for a touchdown on the second play of the game. So
What other matchups do you guys look forward to seeing?
I think that the Steelers have a pretty big matchup this week too, right?
Yeah, but Roethlisberger's out, so that's going to be tougher for them to try to go against Tom Brady and the Patriots when they got Landry throwing to AB, and that's a totally different story.
Well,
What about Minnesota and Philadelphia?
I hope
that's
Philly
gonna be a
can
good
win.
one.
I hope Philly can win. I'm tired of hearing about Minnesota, to be honest with you. I mean, they have a great defense. I'm just tired of hearing about them. But
I would also like to see Philly win, but that's just because, as far as the Seahawks go, if they win their division, they still are vying for home field advantage. And if Minnesota's playing well, which they are, and no one can deny that, they got to get beat at some point in order for us to be able to overtake them and get home field advantage for ourselves.
You know, I think this Minnesota team is like kind of living off of that loss in the playoffs last year to us. They lost by a field goal, and it kind of reminds me of the Seahawks. That year we lost to Atlanta. With when they made the field goal with 30 seconds left. So
except for we had Russell Wilson, they still got Sam Bradford. So
who's been proving to be better than people have.
Well, to be completely honest, Bradford's been in the league this whole time. No one's ever cut him from their team. They've traded him around a little bit, and he just found a new home.
With a good defense, which is the quarterback's best friend.
But he played with the Rams, and the Rams had a really good defense for a while, and he still couldn't.
But they're the Rams, though.
Yeah, I totally get that. But, I mean.
They always beat us.
Yeah. They play us tougher than any other team out there, that's for sure.
That's very true.
But Bradford looks like a good quarterback with the Vikings. It's pretty impressive. He's,
still just one hit away, though. Every year it seems like he gets injured at some point.
Yeah, I think everybody's one hit away, though. I mean, if you want to break it down like that. I mean,
Russell Wilson gets a sprained knee, and he's still.
Anytime I watch Russell Wilson run, I'm like, oh, slide, bro, slide.
Football's a dangerous sport. Anyone can get hurt on any given play.
Absolutely.
So that's all we have time for today, guys. So thank you. And thank you for joining us this week. And thank you, Keone, for joining us as well. Remember, we are the show always chasing the top stories to keep you, our viewers, in the know of what's calling our line the sports line. See you next time.